before the skyscrapers, before the railways, before the very first people set foot on the land we call Chicago, there was nothing. And then, 13.8 billion years ago, everything began. In a single instant, the universe exploded into existence. Energy became matter. Matter became hydrogen. Hydrogen collapsed into the first stars. Those stars lived and died, and in their death, in the violence of supernovae, they forged the heavier elements: carbon, oxygen, iron, silicon, the building blocks of rock, the building blocks of Earth. Our solar system formed about 4.6 billion years ago from a cloud of that stardust, and buried inside it was a small, rocky planet, the third from the Sun. A planet that would eventually hold a city called Chicago. For billions of years, the land beneath what is now Chicago was nothing like you'd recognize. Early Earth was a molten volcanic world, constantly reshaping itself. Over deep time, the crust cooled, seas rose and fell. For hundreds of millions of years, the region that would become the American Midwest was covered by a shallow, warm tropical sea, teeming with life. Coral reefs, crinoids, trilobites. When those seas retreated, they left behind something important: thick layers of limestone, dolomite, and shale, the very bedrock that still sits beneath downtown Chicago today. The foundation of a city that doesn't even exist yet. Fast forward to about 2.6 million years ago. Earth's climate began to shift, slowly, cyclically, driven by tiny wobbles in the planet's orbit around the sun. Summers grew shorter. Snow stopped melting. Year after year, century after century, snow accumulated in the far north, compressed under its own weight, and transformed into something terrifying and magnificent: glaciers. These weren't just snowfields. These were walls of ice, in some places over a mile thick, massive beyond comprehension. And they moved, slowly, a few inches to a few feet per day, but relentlessly, grinding southward, carrying boulders the size of houses. The most recent major glaciation, called the Wisconsin Glaciation, began about 85,000 years ago, and it came for the land that would become Chicago. The Laurentide ice sheet, stretching from the Arctic all the way down through Canada and into the American Midwest, advanced southward. It didn't stop at the Great Lakes region. It came further, it came here. The ice scraped the land flat. It pulverized bedrock into fine sediment called glacial till. It rerouted ancient rivers. It erased whatever landscape existed before and replaced it with something new: a flat, rich, silted plain. The same flatness that makes Chicago's grid possible. The same soil that made the Midwest the breadbasket of America. All of it, a gift from the glaciers. Then, around 20,000 years ago, Earth's climate began to warm again. The glaciers, slowly, unstoppably, began to retreat. As the ice pulled back, it left behind something extraordinary. The massive weight of the glaciers had carved and depressed the land into enormous basins, and as the ice melted, those basins filled with meltwater. Lake Michigan, the body of water that defines Chicago, didn't always look the way it does today. In the early stages of deglaciation, the water level was dramatically different. Ancient shorelines, called beach ridges, are still visible in the suburbs today, silent records of a lake that once stood far higher than it does now. By about 10,000 years ago, the glaciers had retreated far enough that the system of lakes we now call the Great Lakes had taken rough shape. Superior, Michigan, Huron, Erie, Ontario, the largest collection of fresh surface water on Earth, born from ice and gravity and time. The land they left behind? A flat, fertile plain on the southwestern shore of Lake Michigan, drained by rivers, rich with glacial soil, perfectly positioned between the Great Lakes and the Mississippi River watershed. It was, in every way, the ideal site for a great city. But that city was still thousands of years away. First, people had to arrive. Next episode, the first people. Who were the indigenous nations that called this land home? And how did they live here for thousands of years before Europeans ever arrived?